Question for Jay. Is everything we're seeing manufactured?
Not in a sense. I think
You have all these books in front of you talking about the global elites and all that. We
Right.
hear from them all the time about how they want less people. They lower population growth. They want more control. And then I look at all this stuff like, why doesn't the media cover Antifa? Why do they run cover for Antifa? And it's almost like they're serving some kind of purpose.
Yeah, well, I mean, the mass media is a creation of the same people that set up the Davos, that set up Bilderberg, that set up all the things that we know of as the control structure right now. So the United Nations is a creation of this same group. And so if you look at the history of the networks, CBS, NBC, those were all run by people who came out of wartime OSS intelligence, and they just took all of that information that they learned from wartime and applied it to mass media. So mass media has basically been that for this entire time. I was just watching some old Walter Cronkite award reception ceremonies, and he was getting awards for global governance back in the 80s. And he was like a hardcore global promoter, and he was a big promoter of depopulation as well. And so that's definitely one of the themes. I did a talk, the 10 Commandments of the Global Elite. And that's one of those key commandments is you have to maintain, population down at least under 1 billion. That's the near-term goal. So,
And the OSS was a predecessor to the CIA. A lot of people need to realize that as well.
What are the other tenets? You said there were 10 tenets of globalism?
Yeah, I just basically went through a lot of these texts and just kind of ferreted out what were the commonalities and just kind of came up with my own 10. But I mean, it's a world economic system based around some form of universal basic income. It's a world religion. They all write about that.
What's wokeism? The first thing you mentioned, the central bank digital currency, then the woke religion.
And also the turning of the actual existing establishment religions into something that is a form of wokeism, like the Vatican, this kind of stuff, in my view. The Vatican's pushing World Economic Forum principles and inclusive capitalism, which is, Klaus has another book, Inclusive Capitalism. So it's about penetrating the cabinets. That's not one of the 10 Commandments. I was just
Penetration.
Penetration
is a key component.
The creation of a single government, the creation of a technocratic central order. I mean, the Kissinger of France, Jacques Attali, I brought his book. His whole book is about transhumanism basically being the tip of the spear for the New World Order. He calls it that. Like he says, the whole chapter on this is like the tip of the spear is transhumanism. So that's another one of these tenets. So,
how would transhumanism function as a tip of the spear? I mean, the first way I think of it is that they can read your thoughts with a neural net and then they can control your behavior through that. The other idea would be that they make people so depressed that they become vulnerable to manipulation.
Let me give a quick shout out to Stargate SG-1 on an episode that I've talked about before. For those unfamiliar, the show's amazing, by the way. It's a team travels through a Stargate portal to various coordinates to explore other colonies, essentially, like other planets, and it's complicated. But basically, they go to one place where they send out a drone, little robot, and everything's destroyed. But then all of a sudden it flashes and everything's fine. There's a barrier over this small town where everything outside of it is polluted, and this force field is keeping everybody safe. They go inside, they meet people. Eventually, they're like, hey, where's that guy we met? And they go, what guy? And they're like, the guy John, we met John. And they were like, there's no one here by that name. And they're like, what? Randomly, one person just leaves the city and walks out to their death. What was happening was everyone had a neural implant. The central computer was controlling their memories. And when the force field was shrinking as it ran out of power, it would excise people by altering their brains to make them walk to their death and then make everyone forget they existed. That could be happening right now, and you wouldn't know it.
Memory holing, yeah.
We could there's another seat right here, guys. Look at this. There's a chair. It's empty. There's nothing. The camera's not on. The camera's not on.
I was on.
For all we know, there was a lost fifth person on Tim Guest IRL. The memories have been erased.
Is that part of the plan? How deep have you peered?
Pretty deep. Is what part of it? Having an
controlling
invisible
people's
skinny
memory.
dude over here?
Yeah, controlling people's memory to forget.
No, but like
the really skinny dude over here.
controlling people's minds. I mean, intercepting
No, that's
their
real.
memories.
That's totally real. I mean, there's a history of DARPA text that Annie Jacobson wrote, which is a really good book. And I think she got nominated for Pulitzer. She didn't win it, but she did that other famous book on Area 51. But in her history of DARPA, she talks about how there's actually collusion between Hollywood and DARPA to have symbiotic relationship between the creators of TV shows taking ideas like you're talking about Stargate, and then they have a reciprocal relationship with DARPA where they get fed ideas and they feed ideas to people at DARPA. So there's a whole chapter in that too about MK Ultra. I don't know if you guys know about that.
Oh yeah,
I know Luke. Yeah. I know. Yeah, you would know about that.
Well, the
but,
CIA has been involved in Hollywood in so many different ways, especially when it comes to planting and seeding ideas. There's a reason that they promote certain movies, but they do more than that. I mean, the DoD gets involved in a lot of movies, especially when it comes to a lot of military movies, a lot of war propaganda, but specifically the larger psyops, the larger implanting of subconscious ideas is also done by a lot of these central controllers without a lot of people even knowing it.
I just thought of a funny idea real quick before we show your book. I'm just like, shout out for Seamus because it's a good Freedom Tunes where it's like FBI agents are watching Luke's content. They get assigned to watch Luke, and they're like, you need to watch this guy and watch out for his radicalization and radicalism. And the guy's like, yes, sir, you got it. And then it's like 6 months later, and the guy's sitting there wearing a tinfoil hat being like, it's real, it's real. And they're like, Luke got another one, and they drag him off. But yeah, you got a book.
That's my goal.
Well,
how many FBI agents have you radicalized?
Converted.
De-radicalized.
I hope as many as I can. I'm doing my best.